Carla, you ready? I was almost said Trisha, but stop. Okay.
Matter of habit.
We need to wait and hear what that is. Okay. All right. Come to order. If you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'd remain standing for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Okay. Opening up with public forum. Do anybody wishes to speak?
We've got four. I'm sorry. We've got 4 members of the public that wish to speak.
Okay.
I'd like to ask that we start with Inga Jones.
Is that set for you?
Yes. Okay. I have no way of showing my gratitude other than trying to help other people too. This was such a life-changing experience for me. And I thank God for everybody, for all the angels that were there to rescue me, save my life. It was a miracle, but I believe in miracles. And I also believe in angels. I also believe that God sends angels. And I wanted to be one of those angels to help somebody. It's hard to express my feelings. I mean, I can't grasp that I can grasp that the chances were so small. So good right now, and I feel happy that I'm getting stronger every day. And after the fact, it was really, my ribs were just there. But all I kept saying is, I'm alive. So this is a walk in the park, you know, to deal with those ribs. So every 4 hours that went by in the hospital, I said, has it been 4 hours yet? I got a pain pill every 4 hours. So so when I got home, I wanted to get off of the pain pills because they don't make you feel good. They give you the next day, you feel like crap, and so I was so grateful that I'm alive. I could deal with the pain, and now it's almost gone, almost healed. So I'm looking forward to a wonderful new life.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. God bless you, everybody.
For the record, for those not in attendance, Miss Jones was a cardiac arrest survivor that was resuscitated here in Sedona. And next we have Barbara Luttrell, or Laheel? Luttrell, yeah. I was like, Luttrell.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your service on the board, and thanks to Chief Cajun and the staff for their service to our community. I have on several occasions since we moved here 15 years ago had to call on emergency assistance with my dad or my husband, and I've always been grateful that we're fortunate to have good response times and competent staff in Sedona and the Verde Valley. I'm here this afternoon to say that I understand what you are asking for in your bond request. Your documents that I've reviewed support your request, and you had a citizen advisory committee as part of the process. I heard a lot of misinformation when I watched the video of the last board meeting. And the articles by Chief Cajun and Board Member Cooperman have been necessary to be published in order to correct the misinformation, although that's not an easy thing to do in this age of alternative facts when they take on a life of their own. But what I value, and that's really what I wanted to talk about for a minute, is that we are all in this together in this community, in this fire district. We need to work together and support each other. We need to know each other and talk to each other and build trust. In my community involvement, I've interacted with Chief Cajun on various projects, and I trust his ability to run this district. I've worked with members of the board in other capacities and have a level of trust there as well. I see this bond as an investment in our community that will benefit everyone now and in the future. For a homeowner like myself, it means about $100 a year, maybe a little bit more, in order to have a first-class fire department with trained and competent staff. And from my point of view and my values, that's a very reasonable investment in this community. Thank you.
Ms. Karen Strauss, speaking to agenda item 11 alpha.
She's on it.
Public
Or
forum.
2 alpha.
You want to speak to the
Public
public or
forum.
on that item?
Speak to the public.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 alpha, sorry.
Beautiful tribute.
I'm Karen Stroud. I'm a 20-year resident of Sedona. And I'm here today to show my support for the Sedona Fire District, the outstanding leadership of Chris Kazian, the citizens who give their time and expertise to serving on the fire board, and EMTs, firefighters, and staff who serve this district so admirably. I was not able to attend the last meeting, but I did view the online video of the entire meeting. I fear that placing our most important value on money, keeping it for one's own use, being unwilling to spend it prudently and effectively on institutions in our country is so prevalent that it's undermining our country. Here is what I value above money: the value of saving lives, of saving property, and the freedom from fear of losing either. I know that if I have to call 911 on a life-threatening emergency, fire district personnel will respond. When your life or the life of a friend or family or loved one hangs in the balance, money is inconsequential. I know that our fire district has the trained staff, updated equipment, and communication technology. I want them to have that. I am definitely aware that the 6-minute response is the difference between saving lives as well as property. Naysayers base their data on the number of calls and the number of residents. They do not take into consideration always the nearly 3 million annual visitors that we must serve. Emergency calls cannot be scheduled, since in excess of 75% of the 911 calls are for emergency EMT service. My focus is primarily on the life-saving value. Here's what occurred on Memorial Day weekend this year. Fire district crews responded to 3 backcountry rescues, a pedestrian that was struck by a car in Oak Creek Canyon, and in addition, they answered 10 emergency calls in less than 3 hours. Wow. With fewer personnel, less training, and equipment, any one of these incidents may have turned fatal. We need all our stations and personnel in those instances. In conclusion, I'd like to restate that the value of my life and my property is more important to me than the minor property tax investment required by this bond issue. One more sentence. I support the bond issue to keep our district functioning as it does now and in the future. I am not willing personally to accept less. Thank you.
Mrs. Wendy Tanzer. Winsey. Come on up, Winsey.
Thank you, Tuesday. Author Warren Bennis wrote, "There is a profound difference between information and meaning. The presentations made to you during the last meeting by those wearing red shirts were riddled with what I believe to have been intentional misstatements of reality. The words alternative facts have been bandied around quite frequently in recent months, and though it's a delightful media buzz phrase, it screams the inaccuracies of the information being presented. Not only are the red shirts' so-called facts erroneous, but a number of the people stating them couldn't muster the consideration and mere common courtesy to remain seated while our fire chief knocked their allegations down one after the other. Though the truth might have been a bitter pill to swallow under the circumstances, the demonstrated attitude was clear. Don't confuse me with the facts. I've already been told what my opinion is. And every citizen is entitled to their opinion. But shouldn't that opinion be based on genuine information and not on some fabricated numbers based on someone else's, perhaps yet to be disclosed, agenda? I urge every member of the public to exercise their own initiative, get their verifiable information from our fire chief or from the plethora of material available. Our fire district is a public entity. Its costs, operations, budgets, etc., are all freely available public information. No one has to rely on the presentations or false videos being spoon-fed to them. Ask for proof of the numbers being recklessly and erroneously proclaimed before buying into a premise that just may prove to be someone's opening salvo for a run for office, rather than what is in your and the rest of the community's best interest. Look for the motives behind the propaganda being so exquisitely disseminated. Why do the red shirts believe you have to be lied to in order to further their agenda? Why are some people continuing to espouse the fallacies when their information has been proven false? Again, why? And that's the profound difference between information and meaning. Sometimes it's not right about their entire approach. There's malice afoot here. Civic responsibility requires all of us to be diligent. It's never too late to escape the red shirt cult and join reason and civilized society. Thank you.
That's it, okay. All right, thank you. Moving on. We've got a consent agenda. If anybody would like to pull anything out, otherwise I'll take a motion to approve a consent agenda.
You know, I don't want to pull anything out, but I would appreciate Chief Pye, of when the time comes during Chief's report, if you would give us, you know, just a few more words about that Spillman Public Safety System agreement. Not necessarily now, but, oh. Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, Bill, did you want to speak to the typo?
Whenever you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Testing. Hello? Okay. There's just one typographical, I see it's on the agenda for approval. I certainly wouldn't stand in the way of that. I'd recommend you approve it tonight when you get there. It says, let me back up. The document says that upon termination, the district will be paid its final payment, but the district's actually making payments to Cottonwood. They just reversed the words. So I'm gonna fix that I don't think that should delay or postpone your approval of the agreement. But when we're done here, I'm going to go back to the city attorney, make sure he is okay with the exchange of the words, and switch it over so that it provides that Cotton will be paid its last payment instead of Sedona, since you're paying Cottonwood.
So we're approving this within this consent agenda. Do we need to pull that item out and then approve it as with upcoming changes?
Yes, but I think you can go ahead and do that tonight.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna pull that out of the consent agenda. So we're gonna go ahead and I'll look, anybody else have any issues with anything else, 1 through 6? Okay, so removing item 5.
I'm not hearing anybody here, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
It's on.
So removing item 5, I'll look for a motion to approve the other items on the consent agenda as submitted.
I move to approve items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 on the consent agenda as presented.
Okay,
I'll second.
and there's a second. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Tim? Nope, we've lost Tim. Well, he was a good man. We'll remember him fondly.
And then, Mr. Chair, a motion to approve item 5 with the correction as described by legal counsel.
Okay, so then I'll make the motion to the board to approve item 5, the IGA with Spellman Public Safety with the corrections as described by council. Second. Any further discussion?
You know, when I brought this up, I didn't realize that there was a problem in the script. I brought it up so that you could speak to the MDTs when it comes time during your portion of our meeting. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well scripted, thank you.
Okay. But you're okay without that discussion to move forward? Okay. So I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I'm not sure who I'm taking this to. CPR survivor recognition?
This is Division Chief Mazulis will take care of this.
We've got our intern Dylan that's going to come up and have a chat.
Okay.
Hi everyone. Oh yeah, that might be easier, huh? Well, first, just real quick, I want to introduce Brandon. He drove all the way up from the valley to do our CPR recognition for our survivor here, and he just has a few words for you, and then I'll get into my nice little speech for you. Okay?
Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon. I appreciate everyone letting me come on up here and share with you for a minute. Oh, sorry, I'm a little taller than the past few people. Is that better? I've been asked. Sorry. My name is Brandon Griffith. I'm a police officer with the city of Buckeye. I'm a former emergency medical technician, and I am a founding board member of Arizona Cardiac Arrest Survivors. I currently serve as the training and recognition director. Josh Wells and Dylan have asked me to come up here today and speak with you a little bit about the state of cardiac arrest. I know you guys are all EMS professionals. You guys understand where you're coming from, but as public servants, sometimes we don't take enough to sit back and recognize the humanity of what we do. We get too caught up with budgets. We get too caught up with our day-to-day operations and politics. So I was asked to come up here and kind of share my story and talk a little bit about what Sedona could be for cardiac response. I was 26 years old when I went into cardiac arrest. I wish I could tell you I was on duty chasing a bad guy or doing something cool, but like 4 out of 5 cardiac arrests might happen at home. I was with my wife reading a book. When I put it down, I stood up and I collapsed backwards into my bookshelf. I fell forward and put my head through the wall. My wife was in the room with me at the time. She called 911, put the phone on speaker, dropped it, and went to work on me. As I collapsed to the ground, she caught me, and inside my chest, I'm having this electrical storm going on. And if any of you have ever had someone jump out and scare you where your heart flutters, imagine that constantly. My body was shutting down, and I'm talking in less than 2 seconds. I'm trying to do combat breathing. I'm trying to fight through it. There's nothing you can do, and there's nothing like feeling completely helpless and watching your body die. As I fell on my knees, I'm looking out into my hallway, and I'm trying to fight through it, and my vision is turning this dark purple, and it's fluttering. I'm staring into my hallway, and everything went to black. At that moment, I completely dropped dead. My wife rotated me on my back. She's a little thing about 5'2", 5'3", working on me. She rolls me on my back, and she starts doing CPR. She takes my legs and she puts them up on the couch for me and what's called Trendelenburg. That way all the oxygenated blood in my legs went down in my core. She worked on me for about 5.5 minutes. The first responder was a police officer, as is most of these cases. Police officers just happen to have faster response times because they're already in the field, which makes it a necessity to equip them with AEDs. The first officer did a tremendous job. He jumped on my chest doing compression-only CPR, and he worked on me with everything he had. He had full recoil, my shoulders were raising. He worked on me for a couple minutes before the ALS crew arrived. At this time, had my wife not been prepared, I would have already been at about a 60-70% chance of death, because as you know, for every minute waited, the chance of survival drops 10%. ALS pulls my body out into the living room and starts going to work on me. They had to do an IO drill on me. They had to pump me full epinephrine. And according to their log, they worked on me for 6 minutes and 58 seconds. After the third shock, I was finally revived on scene. And it was a long uphill battle after that. There's a lot of stigmas with cardiac arrest. People don't understand that it's not a heart attack. They don't understand that you're not a weakling. It's an electrical malfunction that can happen to anybody, anywhere. Most recently, we've lost a 9-year-old. We've lost a 17-year-old, and it's really striking our college athletes. It's really hitting our high school athletes, and it's something we need to get more involved in with our schools. It's one of the reasons why Arizona cardiac arrest survivors helped pass the CPR in school bill, which requires every student in high school in the state of Arizona to learn CPR as a graduation requirement. Anyway, I had a long battle back. I had to fight my risk management. I had to fight to keep my police certification and get back to the streets, and I'm proud to say that I am currently out there. Working within communities, I've been looking at Sedona, and you guys have a phenomenal community up here. You have dedicated, true professionals and public servants, and you have a small enough population that you guys can get on top of cardiac arrest. If you guys were to equip your police department with AEDs, it's worked tremendously for us in the city of Buckeye. We're passing out life-saving medals like they're candy at this point. They have the faster response times. If you guys open up your firehouses, if you guys open up more training to the public, and you get more AEDs out there, the information's there. You guys can get all you save. It's the #1 killer. Who knows how many people are going to go down in your community in the next month, the next year. We're losing 1,000 Americans every day. So I just wanted to put a little bit of touch of humanity on it and share that story. And I thank each and every one of you for all that you do in the community, and I thank you for your time.
Okay. All right. As I said, I'm Dylan Reisner. I just have a quick speech for you. I'll get out of your guys' hair. All right. So at the age of 14, I lost my grandfather, George Giarusso, to cardiac arrest. I can remember the pain and regret that my grandmother carried with her, wishing she had been able to do more. From that pain, it became clear of what I was called to do. I'm currently attending NAU to complete my bachelor's degree in public health. To finish my degree, I needed to complete an internship with an organization of my choice. I decided to focus my efforts on trying to improve an already successful CPR and AED program that Sedona Fire District has. Chief Mazulis and myself worked together to organize the internship and open the door to future networking opportunities with NAU. Chief Mazulis assigned my internship over to Captain Josh Wells, and together we have been able to help organize and certify more than 70 individuals and counting in CPR and AED awareness in the last 2 months. Some examples of CPR trainings that I've done are at Slide Rock, Church of the Red Rocks, Verde Valley Medical Center, Cliff Castle Casino, and many others. We have worked on ensuring that over 60 AEDs within Sedona are checked and functioning properly for our citizens. Together with our GIS specialist, Tammy, we were able to create an AED map with our dispatch in Cottonwood. I was able to help with the University of Arizona's high-performance CPR training. We are also in the process of getting more resort staff CPR trainings and obtain AEDs for their facilities. However, we have only barely scratched the surface of the work that needs to be done in my 360-hour internship to make a significant impact on cardiac arrest. I believe there needs to be more resources directed to tackle these issues. Through this internship, we know it will show an immediate need for continuing this work throughout the community by hoping to create new possible internships or paid positions that can dedicate their time to this work. In closing, I would like to share and leave you all with the saying that I was told by one of my teachers that resonates with me when I lost my grandfather. He would tell me, even the greatest suffering imaginable can bring forth life in abundance. I believe this speaks volumes, especially with our survivors here today, experiencing a frightening day that could have been their last. However, through the hard work and help of the men and women who serve our community and the organized chain of survival, they have fought and persevered to be here with us today. Thank you.
So board, we walked into our meeting, the group that was presenting our survivor and the responders with recognition for what they did. They talked about the response time of less than 3 minutes getting there, doing CPR, family member dispatch being the integral link to CPR and survival. Our AED program is pretty aggressive as it is. We have lots of AEDs, over 60, I believe I just heard from Dylan. The opportunity to partner with NAU in an internship and open up that networking opportunity is great. And Chief Mazulis has done a wonderful job to help try to focus some of the energy. We had an intern work with HR, and she was with which college? NAU also. So we've been kind of working to try to help open up our doors and help the future of our region and area with opportunities. It's really exciting to see the energy and passion that they bring to our organization and the different perspective. And so I thank Dylan for being here and doing the hard work. Certainly appreciate the hard work of our first responders and dispatchers to get units to the scene and providing exceptional CPR. And lastly, our staff that puts on the CPR classes. We host quite a few CPR classes. Most recently, we had Jody Fowler, one of our admin folks, see there was a need for some additional CPR instruction. And so she's become a CPR instructor to help facilitate, make sure some of the classes have an instructor. And so we really have a pretty aggressive stance on CPR. We'll continue that. And so thank you to our police officer from Buckeye for his story as well. And was that long QT syndrome? Is that what, or different? Undiagnosed, okay. Just curious. It sounded like a long QT syndrome when the way you told the story. So it's out there. And I think, Ed, I think the last numbers I saw, about 24 or so echo responses in the last year. Do you know?
Average about a little over 2.5 a month. Sorry. We average a little over 2.5 echoes a month, but that doesn't account for, calls it goes difficulty breathing to cardiac arrest.
So
Full
we're
codes.
doing full codes more than 2 or 3 times a month. Yeah. And so the tools, equipment, technology, thinking about all the different things we bought, new monitors over all the recent years, the cots that are able to be lifted and raised quickly and safely for our folks, to the ambulances we're purchasing. I mean, it's the whole system, right? And so I thank you for helping us achieve those type of things and hear a great story from a survivor today that she's here, and that's a lot of things going right along the way. So thank you for your part, and thank you to everyone on the floor, to the dispatch, to the people in their homes that are doing CPR at the direction of the dispatchers. So thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Okay, moving on. Gabe? Yes. Financial report.
He's gone now.
We do miss it.
Yeah, we do miss it. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. You have the June financial report in your packet. So June obviously represents not only the month of June, but our fiscal year end. So starting with the June numbers specifically, and then I'll talk about the entire fiscal year. We did receive $177,000 in property tax levy revenue, which was under their projection by a little over $200,000. And again, that's related to kind of those timing, historical collection on timing. When we get to the year to date, you'll see we actually did really well from a property tax revenue standpoint. Non-levy revenue was at $276,000, which was over budget. And the predominant reason for that being over budget is wildland deployments. And again, I'll talk about that a little bit more. And when I say wildland deployments, that represents our actual net revenue, our net profit on our wildland. And so that's after all the associated expenses. Personnel costs were under budget at $839,000. Vehicles and equipment did trend over this month at $147,293. That's typical with kind of that year-end spending getting in place. So from a month-over-month standpoint, we did go over, but again, when I get to the year-to-date, you'll see we did remain under from a year-to-date perspective. Communications at 39,101. Managerial expenses were at 44,670, and expenses out of capital and contingency were 145,046. Our total expenses for the month of June were $1,216,000, which was about 100,000 over what our budget was for the month of June. But again, we're still in, I'm sorry, 100,000 under what our budget was, but we're still in a good position when we look at all the year-to-date stuff as well. So
Gabe, now that we're fiscal year's completed, some of the things that we've talked about over the past year of the true up, if you will, of that we won't have so much fluctuation in this next coming year.
Correct.
Because now you've got a year of data.
correct. One of the things we did in this budget year is although we developed, I say summary packets over 100 pages, but we do have that summary budget document which shows everything as essentially a one-year column. But then behind that, we've developed a 12-month budget behind that. So when we start next month's report, we'll start truing up more of these variances that you've seen historically from this year's report. So next year, the next 17-18 fiscal year presentation, you'll see I'll be able to be closer in line with our projections, or be able to explain the variances a little bit more. So when we look at our year to date, you can see the gray representing our actual compared to budget. Our total revenue for the year was $15,171,000, which was over budget by $179,000. So from it's a big deal.
You've angered somebody with that.
Property tax revenue, you'll see, actually came right in line with budget. We're about $300 off on property tax revenue, which is really good. FDAT, which is our Fire District Assistance Tax, was about $5,000 over budget, which is also good. But really, our non-levy revenues were the majority of that variance came from, and that was really due to wildland. We saw $173,000 in net revenue from wildland this year. So while sometimes it seems like wildland is a lot of work, the guys benefit from it, and the district benefits from it greatly, and so we appreciate what they do there. That helps bring in some other revenue that wasn't fully anticipated. Yes, Chief.
Gabe, and so just so I'm clear, the revenue that we're still receiving from some of the wildland deployments that occurred before the end of the fiscal year and/or EMS billing will still be added into that revenue back as well. Is that correct, or when does that cutoff stop and start?
So essentially, these are accrual basis reports. So I believe there's still one or two billings left on wildland from last fiscal year that we haven't billed yet. So that will increase that number a little bit more. But as far as ambulance billing, all of our ambulance billing is recorded, fiscal year to date. So there is obviously the cash. We haven't received all the cash yet, but from the revenue standpoint, we've met the revenue number. So that will increase. And actually, on the ambulance standpoint, we got the signed order Monday, I believe. The DHS director actually signed the order on our rate increase. So our new rates are in effect as of Monday, I believe, Monday or Tuesday. So that's some good news there. When you look at the remainder of our expenses, you can see between personnel, vehicles and equipment, utilities, managerial, and capital and contingency, we've remained under budget on our expenses across all other categories. Our total expenses for the year were at $14,154,000, which was $1.7 million under what we budgeted. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we have $1.7 million more in cash, because we did have in our budget roughly $700,000, almost $800,000 in carryover funds. So money that we didn't expend in the prior year that we brought forward to help offset the levy for this past budget year. So the good news is we didn't expend that cash, and we also came to the positive from our revenue and our expenses to the net of $1,017,000. So when I get to the cash position, you'll see that reflective there. The other thing I really want to add on the budget side is again, we've spent a lot of time this budget year, especially with some of the constraints we saw with legislative changes and the PSPRS impact, narrowing down and tightening the budget even more. And we'll continue to see that and continue to work through that through this year and into the future years. percentage of expenses, with the full fiscal year completed, 77% of our expenses go to personnel. That is actually much better than most organizations. Most organizations are in the 80 to 85%. So the fact that we're even under 80% on our total expenses for personnel gives us, a little bit more capacity and flexibility with our budget and the management of our finances. On the personnel side, I do want to kind of add in a little piece. I understand there's kind of a recent report on top wage earners in the area, and a couple things I want to point out about that is, one, the report gives us a snapshot of 5 of our employees, okay? The district has over 90 employees. So we're really only looking at a small snapshot. When we look at the average of the other employees, our operational staff only averages about $72,000 in actual earnings on average. And that kind of varies through the different ranks. Obviously, firefighters' average is much lower at $58,000. You get up to the battalion chiefs and their average is about $110,000. But the other big thing to note is specifically with one of our battalion chiefs is all of those wage comparisons are being compared to 40-hour-a-week employees, which equates to really only about 2,080 hours a year. The wage that was reported for Sedona that was much higher than all those, that individual actually worked over 4,000 hours in that year. So it's not when you see these numbers and you see these comparisons put up there, you've really got to look behind what the comparisons are saying and see the fact that, yes, this may be a higher number, but there's so much more behind that, including the amount of hours that person worked compared to the other, and then also where's the money coming from? With that excessive amount of hours, a lot of that was related to wildland deployments, which are expenses that the district doesn't. It's a reimbursed expense for the district. So while we, I don't know if I should keep talking tonight. While that expense was paid out, we received reimbursement for over $45,000 of it. So I just wanted to kind of give the board a little bit more information, a little bit expanded information on some of the stuff that was out there.
Gabe, from somebody who's been through this before, this is very deja vu. It's the exact same thing that happened before with the exact same explanation. Somebody that works 4,000 hours a year is going to make twice what somebody who makes 2. It's simple math.
Right.
So if you just take the number and don't give any data behind it, it doesn't.
Exactly.
It's poor data.
Right.
So we've fought this fight before, and we can fight it again if we need to. But there's nobody on this department that is compensated out of line with what they do.
Exactly. And my role as kind of that external finance director to you guys is to make sure that's known, both for your perspective, the administration perspective, and even, I do speak, obviously, as presenting my financial reports verbally, I'm speaking to everybody who's watching our reports in this presentation. I just want to make it clear that what I'm seeing with my experience working with other districts is that's the normal when you start taking into account these other factors. And if you isolate those other factors and look at just what Sedona Fire pays for that employee to do their job as a Sedona firefighter, it's a much different perspective and a much different number and outlook. And I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. So in closing, we had a very good year, and we did very well as far as managing the budget and seeing the benefit of those wildland deployments. And so, as I mentioned, we did end the year with $5.6 million in total cash compared to $4.6 million the prior year, which is an increase of just about $1 million. You do see our other assets have decreased from $1.2 million to $846,000. A lot of that has to do, again, with due froms from our other funds, and not a representation of any loss. And then finally, liabilities decreased from $769,000 to $394,000. So, in closing, for not only my June report but the fiscal year 16-17, it was a good year for the organization. Good fiscal management as far as expenses go. And, frankly, the guys are out there doing what they can, too, for the organization and generating additional revenue for Sedona Fire that we would not have seen if we didn't have that. So, unless there's any questions, that concludes my financial report.
Anybody? Okay. Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you. Stay. I'm gonna stay up here.
All right, let's go ahead and, I'll make a motion to approve the report as submitted.
Second that?
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Okay, housekeeping is done. Gabe, go ahead.
Thank you.
to Payroll count.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we received a letter last month from Bank of America, basically stating that they were going to be ending their relationship with Sedona Fire. And obviously, when I get a letter like that, I pick up the phone and call them and why. A lot of the financial reform that came out a few years ago really put a lot of constraints on banking institutions when it comes to doing business with government entities, especially the fact that Bank of America is a big part of Merrill Lynch, which is an investment advisory. And Merrill Lynch is at the point where they won't do business with government at all. And so in talking with our banker at Bank of America, we don't have enough volume and we don't do enough transactions with Bank of America for them to warrant keeping our account with the added regulation and the work it's on their end to have a government client. So it's nothing to do with our relationship with them or what we've done with them. It's merely a business decision from their standpoint due to regulation. The account was scheduled to be closed on August 15th. They're giving us really kind of the time we need to make the transition. And speaking with Pam, and my recommendation is we move our payroll account to Chase Bank. We already have our ambulance fund there. It'll allow seamless transfers of money between to fund payrolls. It'll allow Pam to deposit the funding for payroll from her desk instead of having to send an employee out to Bank of America every 2 weeks to make that deposit. So we've got a good relationship with Chase, both here at Sedona and with my other clients. So you have before you kind of a motion to not only authorize the closure of the Bank of America account, the establishment of the Chase account for payroll, and authorizing myself to act as the district's representative in banking matters with Chase, not as a signer on the account.
Well, I could make, I move to approve the closure of the payroll account at Bank of America, establish a new payroll account at JP Morgan Chase, and appoint Gabriel Boldra, Finance Director, as an authorized representative.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Gabe. Are we on to you, Chief? Yes, we're on to you.
We're moving and grooving here. This is kind of fun. Sounds like other people are bowling and excited for us to be somewhere else
Chief.
too.
Just a minute. Just to let you know, we're under a severe thunderstorm watch right now, and we've got a big purple cloud coming towards us. So I want to let you know that if we lose power, we'll lose power, and we'll adjourn until we reset.
Yeah, there's a good chance that we should be under generator power should kick in. Yeah. If not, we'll get some candles and
Does that include the village
Okay.
as well?
It extends from, basically, the storm follows 179 up to the Y and then up 89A. It's crazy. It looks like a map, but it's a huge storm that's moving.
looks like we scared the newspaper away already. No, they,
And Betty stepped
Oh,
out
he's in
to
trouble.
put the windows in her car down to cool off.
yeah, I don't know. Is there any more water? You know, is there any?
Here, right,
Oh, all right.
There you go.
Tim. may
Okay.
Rest in peace, there's just water.
All right, board. My monthly report. So busy month. 442 calls for the month. So you can see that's substantially almost 50 more than the highest month there. That's a really busy month. Quite a bit of that happened in the rescue and EMS division. Certainly looking at the rescue incidents, we looked at 22 backcountry rescues in the month of June of 2017 compared to 10 in 2016. So just busy, still trending about 50 calls short from last year to date, but that's a busy weekend sometimes for us. So as mentioned by one of the people in the call the public, yeah, we've just been experiencing some incredibly busy bursts of time. I don't know if Battalion Chief Lakowski has any insight to how busy we've been going. I think last week you said we had 2 or 3 times we were down to 2 people in the district. With that, you got a call, you got to go. Or maybe Assistant Chief Pichero, Operations Chief, can elaborate on that. But we've had multiple times this last week talking to Battalion Chief Cochran, I believe it was, that said we were down to 2 people here and we had 1 ambulance left. And it's a frequent thing. It's not a matter of what happened one time that's interesting. It's a pretty frequent situation we're experiencing.
It's a weekend rush, and so starting Fridays through Sunday mornings, we're busy, the battalions have been really proactive in balancing the systems. The crews have been very agile in staffing up reserve ambulances as we need them. We added the 3rd reserve ambulance this winter. We finally got the fleet balanced, and it's been utilized, I think, 3 out of the 4 weekends in the past month. So it's worked out really well. And our neighbors, Verde Valley Ambulance Company and Verde Valley Fire District, have helped out in covering the areas as well.
Yeah, just looking at the calls, we've got 4 calls in less than an hour here, just in the last hour. We have a storm going, so that's probably the last 2 calls. But anyway, it's frequent, and the loading is such that we keep pretty busy, as you see in these calls here. So I would say that some of the longer response times may have something to do with some of that rescue stuff. Again, typically happening a little bit further out, and those type of things. But the response times are up a little bit this past month. So, as I've cautioned many times, looking month to month is a little tight snapshot. Looking at grants, Pam is checking every day. I'm not sure if we haven't heard from them is a good thing or a bad thing. But boy, I sure would be excited to get that phone call that we got a new Type 3 engine being funded. Certainly would be music to my ears. But any of the grants we have that are pending would certainly help us with some opportunities to limit our exposure and improve and enhance what we're doing. So staying posted with that for now. A new one on there is EMS documentation, which Battalion Chief Mazulis has added to the list. It's about a $12,000 class that we would be hosting, looking for a 50-50 match from NAMES, Northern Arizona EMS. And Ed, you sit on that board as well, is that correct?
I'm the NAMES DHS Education Committee rep, so technically I'm on the board, but not as a voting capacity. I'm just the education rep for state level.
We're engaged in that. We continue to keep our fingers in the pot where we need to be. EMS is a lot of what we do. So thanks for Ed for stepping up and doing that. We always go this. We got to switch this someday. But by station, you see the stations. What we're talking about stations. Are you ready, Jeff, to chat about those numbers? So on the agenda talks about the 2017 responses. We've heard a little bit of discussion about our calls, our incidents. We report on our annual report the number of incidents that we have that occur in our district. So that number last year was 4,289 or something like that, whatever the number was, 4,400 calls roughly, something. That's the number of actual calls that happen. But sometimes when a call happens, a couple stations respond to that one call. And so we're looking at the number of responses because that's different. So if we have a rollover accident on 179 at the Y, we're going to have resources come from station number 4 in Uptown, and then either station number 6 or station number 1, depending on where the call is actually at. So that's 2 responses, 1 incident, 2 responses. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Multiple units. So there's kind of 3 different factors there. So I'd, Assistant Chief Pichero, take a look at our responses that we have, and it paints a little different picture. Station 6 has been getting a lot of attention by some folks, and that station ran about 224 calls in fiscal year. Is it 224 calls, Jeff, in fiscal year 17? Okay. Yeah, let's get the number confirmed in its still district. That number is very clear. That's the calls that happened. That doesn't mean Station 6 handled all of those calls, because Station 3 may have grabbed one, or Station 4 may have come down, because Station 6 may have been out. But that's the number that happened in that geographic boundary. We actually had 712 calls that Station number 6 responded to in fiscal year 17. 3.5 times the number that happened in the still district. So when we talk about things like it costs $11,000 to go on the number of calls or whatever that is, the numbers to get to that, to even do the math, aren't right. But when you 3.5 times the number that they're dividing by, it's going to change that number dramatically. It's not a real good indicator anyway of how it goes. In that response, you can look and say, well, we have this big of a budget, this number of calls, and divide the number of calls per the entire budget. There's capital in there. We own a lot of resources that are, in our, that don't lose value and depreciate, so it's just, it's very myopic to look at some of these things and do the math. The math works. You can divide any number by a number and get a number. Does it make sense? Was it being benchmarked against? So I had Jeff take a look at some numbers, and if you just want to give us a slight update, Jeff, on where we are, it's not, we got problems.
Connectivity gods are
I can tell you that we had, it was about 5,000, gosh, I'm going by memory here, which can be dangerous, but about 5,200 responses versus the 4,400. The number of actual units that responded was like 7,750 or something like that. That's a number of units that actually went on calls for that 4,000. Yeah, right here. This guy's good. Hang on. Is it this one? There's another page.
There's a graph, but there's no numbers, just a graph.
Well, that's no good.
Yeah.
Who wrote this graph?
I mean, I didn't put numbers with it.
I'll take it, Jeff. I got it. So at the end of the day, Station 1 had 1,800 and some calls in its still district. We actually only responded to 1,559 out of this station because Station 6 went to do an interfacility or whatever it was, things like that. So Station 1 here averaged 4.27 calls a day. Station number 3 ended up running 1,417 calls. They averaged 3.88 calls a day. Station number 4 ran 1,218 calls, which is 3.34 calls a day. Station number 5 ran 260 calls, and there was 0.71. And station number 6 went to 712. I think I said 711. Maybe I said 712. I don't remember. And that's an average of 1.95 calls a day. The critical piece I want to share with some of this response stuff is really, it's hard to say, well, you had 1.95 calls out at station, or you had 0.71, so therefore I don't think that station's necessary. It's a complete package. It's about the response times across the entire district. And so it would be very, when they look at the data, the other thing that's kind of interesting is Station 1 and Station number 4, their number of calls and number of responses were much more similar because they don't have, they're going to a lot of calls in their respective areas. Both 1 and 4 are two busiest stations. But Station 4 and 6 specifically in the center have far more calls than actually in their still district because they're backing up Station 1 and Station number 3, and it's substantially different than what their actual call volumes, back to the 200 and some calls in Station 6's district, but the 712 they actually responded to. The point of this story is it is a system that is developed to all interwork with each other, and it would be not correct to look at carve out one piece of the pie and say, look at that, and here's what this is worth or isn't worth, or how it impacts the entire system. And we've definitely seen Station 6 make huge impacts. We've definitely seen that Station number 5, while the call volume is at 0.71 a day, is not considered a busy station, I would say. The response in our district and the distances it's critical that Station 5 is in play. Even if someone could say, well, they want less than one call a day. I heard the chief say that in that meeting. They're still vital to what we're doing as an entire district and play a really important role in our response package. And I don't know, Jeff, if you got anything else you want to add on that?
So in doing our data analysis and conforming to a more data wonk review of how we start projecting calls, particularly in the village of Oak Creek, we're starting to utilize Station 6 to flex over to the VOC when 3's committed to calls on a longer basis, or we're moving ambulance 561 into the village more often when ambulance 531's out, and we still have the uptown rig still available. So we're flexing resources to fill gaps, and we're developing an accounting method, if you will, to track those moves, so that if they don't get a call, they're not targeted or pinged as a response, but they've had a vehicle movement just to cover. So we're trying to develop a process to count that move, that flex, if you will. But it's worked out in a number of occasions in the last 3 months. We've been flexing and to our benefit, where we've had an ambulance on the scene sooner, or we've had engine 561 in the village and there was another call, and they covered it sooner versus having to wait for 561 to come out of the chapel. We've never left the chapel uncovered. The ambulance or the engine have been in the chapel area. So we've always kept that area covered and not left it empty. So it's a beneficial system, and when Station 4 is busy, Station 6 moves into 4's area and flexes up there. So it's an integral piece to help the coverage system, which is a part of a reliability factor, that you want to make sure you have systems, vehicles in play, so that when the call comes in, you've got something available at a more timely basis instead of a lengthy response time.
Thank you. Years ago, when we were considering building Station 6, it was that very fact that really impressed the board, that it not only would it provide quicker service in the chapel area, but equally as important, it could get itself down to the village when there's limited, when engine is already out there. And so thank you for telling us that was true. Yeah.
Yes.
It is true as spoken. And so, the management of all the moving pieces, as Chief Lakowski has had to leave the meeting, we got another call just happened now, so that's constantly what's happening, 24/7 with all these resources, and for the organization to have skilled people to be able to make all those moves and understand how they all work, understand the staffing that has to go with that, the fact that we have all ALS engines, there's a cost to that. But we've taken that initiative to understand that there's a value and a benefit that if an engine shows up, we're going to be able to go to work and do everything but transport a patient because of, again, that call loading and call volume that we have. It's proven beneficial on every day, really, at the end of the day, every day. And so it's important stuff, and important for the people that watch these meetings to understand that there's quite a bit happening. And it's certainly not easy. We certainly just got done listening to the financial report and where we are and where we're going, our cash position, our liability reduction. I mean, it's all there that we're going the right direction. Some may not believe that, so I guess that's for us to continue to work at. But I can tell you, as a fire chief, I'm working pretty darn hard, and work with a really great group, a team, and we make some great stuff happen. So with that, that's the call volume stuff and per station, and we'll work on changing how we report those on this report in the near future to reflect those things we just talked about. Donations.
Excuse me, Chief,
Oh,
real
sorry.
quick, back on that point, do we have a plan in place? I could only assume that we do, for those rare occasions when we use all of our resources and we have to call in someone from Cottonwood, Clarkdale,
Yeah.
Copper Canyon, and transversely, if they have, used all their resources, do we send people out, thereby leaving holes here?
Absolutely. So that's the mutual aid system that we use. So on occasions where we have where they have a fire, there's a car accident on I-17 and it's whatever mile marker, especially southbound, because we can get out there and go south. They got to come all the way up and go all the way down. We can beat them to a lot of their accidents. So we have an auto aid response to the I-17, for instance. And so that's very normal for all of us to have back and forth. If there's a fire off of Page Springs Road, we maybe do with a water tender out of this station, for instance, automatically, or an engine from the village, depending on where it's at, things like that. So that's part of it. And likewise, when we have a fire, they may be sending an engine up to us automatically, or on a request if need be, if we're busy on calls. So that happens. As it relates to being tapped on all the resources, that's more of a call as you need. And so we send resources down to backfill their areas if needed, and they send up to us as needed. We also have,
So it's a twofold then. So they don't only assist us on an incident, but they may cover, because of an incident, those vacated stations to run their calls.
correct. And so we'll and if we take their engine, we're stripping some of their resources. So we try to balance that. It's a very delicate balance we try to leave. So we can't go, hey, we have 5 stations, send us 5 units, and we'll like we're flush. That doesn't happen, but we'll put one at station 1 or one at station 3 or both, 1 and 3 to kind of cover the corners and then work our way in. That happens. We certainly have the ability to do recalls for personnel. So we have options for that. As we just put our new engine in service the other day, that creates a reserve apparatus now for us that we didn't have. So if we do have an incident, we have the ability to staff a reserve engine if that's what happens in an extended incident. So there's lots of little parts and pieces all coming together to make that happen. Does that answer your question? Did I miss anything?
Thank you.
Sorry, my computer's liking to go to sleep. All right. Some donations in the books there. Continue to thank all the nice people that send us donations. We appreciate that. Community risk management. John is actually at a class today, so he's unable to make it. Continuing education remains to be important, but they're doing lots of great stuff in the office there. And so we appreciate the hard work they're doing there, and they're really streamlining operations. We've got Carla here stepping in for Tricia for today, but she's in there making a world of difference, and we appreciate what she's doing in there. I will say a couple projects of interest would be mostly the outlet mall and the VOC. They're doing some considerable renovations out there with a hotel and restaurants and a couple things like that. So you'll see quite a bit going there. And then we're seeing some new construction happening down in Sedona Ranch off of Loy Road, off the lower loop road there that is making some impacts. I won't go through his graphs because there's a lot to look at there. But
Do you know when the 179, the VOC project is supposed to start?
I don't know. Carla may know.
The outlet malls?
Yeah.
We're coordinating some training with the local law enforcement agencies to do some active shooter drills in the fall time frame. So I expect end of October they're going to really earnestly get down to work.
Okay. That's going to be could be more of a traffic issue than we already have.
Yeah.
With major construction going on right there on 179.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what the plan is for that. I'm not sure it'll impact 179 traffic so much. I mean, there may be stuff coming in and out of there or whatever that could create issues, but there's also a storage facility, I believe, going in there also in that area. So lots happening there, and we're on it. We're keeping on it, and John and Rick Evans are doing really good prioritizing some stuff, and through the accreditation process, we're looking at some pre-planning and some things happening. So we got lots of stuff going on. And I'm trying to figure out how we're gonna get it all done because there's a lot to do, and just a lot to do, and so. In the training office, the training division, well, I guess one thing I'll highlight here is just that we recently have conducted some recreational off-highway vehicle association training, and this really stems from making sure we're qualified, certified, and capable to operate in the UTV arena, both in the wildland, which is beginning to require that type of certification, as well as just for a pure safety standpoint for our organization. I had a captain come to me after a staff meeting last couple weeks ago and just said, Chief, I got to tell you, the UTVs are making a world of difference. I don't know how we did it before we got the ones that we have now. And we had one, now we have two. Well, I have three technically. We didn't get rid of the old one. But the two that are really our main service, the other one's used for wildland mostly, it's making a world of difference for their responses. We are going out to, where were you at yesterday? 38-minute response, was it?
Yeah, it was the 525 in Boynton Canyon. Go a little bit farther north, down a big hill, through the wash, and up the hill again. So, yeah. It was 38 minutes.
I think it was a 38-minute response to get out to a fire alarm yesterday, that we took his car out to. And so anyway, the UTVs and those type of typical responses would if it was a rescue, it was a fire alarm in this case, but they would pay big dividends and access much quicker. So working smarter, working more efficiently, just adding to the equipment list that we have, and it's all for the right reasons. So Carol Gondolfo has been one of our volunteers, does a great job with our CISM. She's been taking classes and continuing to work with folks in there, so we appreciate her hard work each and every day. I think that's it on my, at least what's in the budget there. The packet. I've got a couple other items on my list here. So Cottonwood Public Safety Communications Center. You mind talking about that, Jeff, as it relates to the center and Board Member Cooperman's request?
So with the agreement now with Spillman in play, the work group's going to come together, put the plan together for final deployment of the MDTs. Bob Modes is going to work with their IT director directly to formulate the plan. He's going to get the test equipment on the bench, work it out, and then deploy it. He's hoping by the end of October to have the program deployed through the units. I had hoped when I talked to you in the wintertime by the end of June.
I remember you said solstice.
Yeah. Well, this agreement's been sitting at the Cottonwood Attorney's Office for almost 2.5 months, and we just got it just a couple weeks ago. So things creep and crawl and just don't go very fast sometimes. But at least we're moving forward now. We've got the agreement. We're going to give them money to perform, and so we're very excited to get that rolling and going. Along with that, the MDT project, the GIS folks for the district are working with map layers to put that back on the MDTs, updated for not only the trail rescue piece, but working with our pre-planning programs to tie that all together and align response with pre-plans of the buildings, properties. So that'll be at the captain's fingertips right there. Performance-wise, we had a Firehouse software, which is our reporting system that then loads into our data analytics, did an update that messed up our transfer of data to the analytics tool. So I don't have a report on for the last month for you on that one. But talking with Marie Carpenter just a week and a half ago, they've really taken previous reports and focused on reports, particular incidents as to why it took so long. And so she's drilling with her team to really streamline process and focus on moving calls out and getting it to the stations. She's also working with the 911 PSAPs that receive the calls to figure out that time delay between them getting the call for 911 services and Cottonwood receiving it to push. It seems to be an elusive number. We have Coconino County, Yavapai County, City of Sedona, and feeding into this one site. So it's just a different animal that she's really having to work with.
And they're receptive to her working with them?
They are. They've never been really tasked or challenged to provide the information, and we're actually causing them to ponder and think how they want to do that. So it's good.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the? Okay, good. Conditional use permit for station number 5. You saw that in your packet. Just it was approved by the county, so we can continue to occupy station number 5 as legally allowed. We talked about the fiscal year 2007 response statistics already, so we can move on from that. Thank you letters. I didn't catch if there's any thank you letters in there, but there probably were a few. We seem to get them on occasion. Any questions about the thank you letters? So, yeah, I think she actually took time to actually write each one of the firefighters a letter individually, which is, that's unique, but we appreciate that greatly. All right, some other exciting news as it relates to Coconino County and Sedona Fire District. I did have a BAC on that, on the Station 7, Station 2017 number, so they're all in your packet. It was 5166 total responses. So, we get to my next one here. So, station number 4, property acquisition. So, if you remember going back a ways, when we were talking about property and what we own. So station number 4 sits on a parcel that previously was identified as being owned by Coconino County. There are 1, 2, 3 parcels, I guess, in total we own two of them. One was purchased in 1982 or 3, if I remember right, where the towers sit. Then there was the parcel that's an L shape, which includes the annex building, which we purchased in 2003. And there was belief that in 1982 or 83, that when we bought that parcel in the back, we bought the parcel underneath station number 4. That sales language was all done by, 19 degrees past the corner, however they do those legal descriptions of stuff. And the people, we believe, thought that was inclusive of the Station 4 property. They didn't use a PIN number. When I've been doing this research, as we look at Station number 4 renovation, replacement, I've realized that Station 4 is still owned, and there is we don't have ownership of it. So I reached out to the county supervisor, Matt Ryan, and his assistant, but Susan Brown, who works for the county also, I'm sorry. They're like, no, you own that parcel. And we said, no, we don't, it's not, So anyway, we worked through, and the county realized that parcel they believe was supposed to be deeded to us back in 1982. The nice part about that is I used some things like anonymous letters, in which I've received from other people who have sent me letters without a name on it, but they clearly articulated in that letter that we owned that parcel. So that was able to at least identify that even whoever wrote that anonymous letter felt that we owned that parcel. It came in handy trying to part 30 years worth of information together. Long story short is the county filed a quitclaim deed, signed over the parcel to us, and while we're waiting to get it finally recorded and everything, there's some, just waiting for it. The board action's been done, and that parcel is now, or will be in ownership of Sedona Fire District. And so I have to say publicly thank you to Matt Ryan, Supervisor Matt Ryan, for making that happen and being a good steward of his constituents that he represents here in the city of Sedona, as well as public safety and the interest of this, the Sedona Fire District. So I'd entertain any thoughts, questions, or comments you may have about Supervisor Ryan's doings. No? Okay.
All right. Nope. That's excellent that that's cleaned up, especially as we're looking to potentially bulldoze and rebuild on that spot, that we won't have any issues with that. So that's wonderful. You got one more item on there, Chief.
I do. So discussion of SFD bond, just to let you know where we're at this point. We have passed your board action at the last meeting, worked with the attorney, and are filing all the paperwork for the bond question and such, translated to Spanish and all the things you have to do for the voter information pamphlet, and that process is going. So there's not really, at this point, it's just make everything happen and file the right things and post the right things and do all the stuff that we need to do to keep legal on that. So we will certainly handle that accordingly. I don't have a rebuttal or anything to say about the bond itself based upon some of the discussions, but we'll be working on, Gabe and I worked today quite a bit on the facts that were presented, the financial facts about the bond. And I would say that, I don't know if we found any of them that were actually accurate. There were some that were close-ish, but none were accurate, and some were extremely inaccurate. And so been working with a newspaper that asking for some information, and we'll get the word out the best we can to continue to at least provide facts, be transparent as I've sworn to be. And it was a long meeting last time, so we're doing our job here at the fire district each and every day, proudly, happily, and with honor. And as we heard today with a survivor, and by the folks that spoke today, we're working hard and doing what we can do. So the rest will be out of our hands, and we're just going to do what we can do to provide information from this point forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, we have one final issue in here, and Bill, I'm going to ask you to help me with this, because this was, we needed to come back here and adopt the process, I believe, that we used for the fire chief evaluation, because the evaluation's been completed. We voted on his evaluation last time, I believe. Is that, we accepted the evaluation as it was?
So if I could, so as I recall, and as Tricia recalled from the minutes, there was a request by the board or a board member at a previous meeting or an executive session to bring this on the agenda for a future meeting, June or July. So June, we were a little busy, so we opted to bring it
Well,
at
I
the July
believe this
meeting.
is just that we adopt the process that we used this year as the evaluation process for the fire chief, because we've never had a formal, every year we've come up with a process. We've never had a
Correct.
formal process.
So,
So we'd like to
yes,
put this in policy and put it in the board policies, that this is the fire chief evaluation process.
I believe it's, Betty,
that
is that your recollection as well, or we got this thing now, the tool, is really the tool more than the process, the tool, I guess, is probably what,
I don't know what you discussed in executive don't know what you discussed in executive session, but I think that was the hope, that the tool we put in place for this past season would be a tool we could use in the future. So I was
Because his
hoping that the
evaluation
board.
is completed and
It is
posted
completed and done.
So this is
and-
just, this is just.
And
the
it's only
process.
right that he understands what the expectations are for the next evaluation period. We're in the middle of that right now. So my question was which tool, if this tool worked, maybe it can work again next spring.
Yep. Uh, Okay.
And the idea of doing this is so that not only chief, do you understand what's you're going to see in your evaluation in terms of the way it's handled, but also it allows us, as board member Dave Soto has really been concerned about, that we can get it done in a timely manner so that it is done by its due date of April 1st, I believe, every year, March 30th.
Mid-March, early March, yeah.
So we haven't put together a motion for this specifically, but I would say, and Bill, if you help me craft it, I'm just gonna say that we're going to use the process that we used this year and the tool that we use this year in the future for fire chief evaluations.
I think that's well said.
Okay, that's my motion.
All right, I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and if we want to formalize that statement into a policy for the board, I think that's a good idea, so it carries forward for other chiefs and other boards, that there is a formal policy.
hopefully be like 10 or 12 more years till you hear about other chiefs, just for the
Well,
record. I'd like to have that
I
reflect.
just know this department's
10,
gonna
let's
be
go
here a
with
lot
10. My
longer
wife
than
won't
me.
like 12,
How
but
many
10.
years?
10, let's go with 10.
All right.
12 might be long. We'll see.
All right, well, we don't have a fire marshal this evening for our safety message.
No, but I'll give a safety message if
All
you don't
right.
mind, in his honor, or in his stead.
It's the
So,
second one we've lost.
Right now, well, we lost Tim here
We lost
today. No.
Tim, and now we've lost John.
So board and the viewing public, we just got a flash flood warning now, just now. Our crews just got dispatched a second ago to Devil's Bridge for a rescue in what we've all heard, the thunders and the lightning and the rain happening and everything. So we're sending a company out to go rescue somebody who's out on Devil's Bridge, and
12 people.
12 people?
It's 10 to 12 people.
10 to 12 people that are trapped or need rescue of sorts. I don't know if anyone's hurt or whatever, but you could imagine being a little scared, I guess, in this type of weather. The flash flood warning is something that means that the conditions are right, that at a moment's notice you could experience a flash flood. We just witnessed and watched what happened in Gila County on Saturday afternoon, where 9 people are confirmed with 1 missing, celebrating a 27th birthday for a woman and her 3 kids and her brother and a sister and all the relations there. 9 people confirmed dead. Being prepared and understanding what this beautiful nature we live in can bring is really, really important. And we'll go out and we'll provide rescue services and recovery and the things that we need to do. But really want you to make sure you're recreating safe. So during wildfire season, not having, fires or, they're not allowed, things like that, that's a danger. And in this type of weather, when we have warnings, to pay attention and understand. Listening to the survivor of that incident, he said he just heard a small roar coming, and then next thing you know, it was washed away. I mean, it wasn't, and he seemed like he was paying attention and things like that from what his report in the newspaper was. So today we had Chief Paichura interviewed by Fox News, and he made his, is that your Sedona debut on the news? No? You've been, all right, just checking. That's definitely worth pie tomorrow, by the way. Pie from pie if you're on the news. But our community is definitely at risk every day. We have lots of people recreating in the creek around these type of things, and making sure people know. In that case, there was no rain in the vicinity from the reports, so it wasn't that they were even in a place that it rained up above and came down with no warning. And so I know Dave is a search and rescue guy. If you have anything else you want to add to that, I just ask that people are safe, pay attention to your warnings, and be prepared, because this type of stuff happens. And anything else?
No, it's just being aware of weather conditions and around you. And as you stated, not necessarily right where you're at. It could be an hour up, and it's coming.
Yeah. So thank you. Be safe.
Thank you. Be safe, everybody. We're adjourned.
Second, like grab this mayor fire. Hey, Mike.
Good to see you too.
That's why I said I wanted to go. Go, good luck, be careful.